Hi, my name is Kenny Perez, and I will be talking to you about my reflection over this week's reading and videos I watched. So, on the book of Van Warmer and Davis, one of the main points they talked about was ethnicity, culture, and the socioeconomic determinants of addiction. So, for now, professionals understand that a person's trajectory to addiction problems and road to recovery is not preordained and the same for everyone. Rather, it is mediated by socioeconomic determinants such as racism, poverty, sexism, and the unequal distribution of housing and educational resources. Some are beyond an individual's control, but affect in every aspect of a person's life. There has been studies how racism, education, and economic um, have heavily influenced on the trajectory of addiction. The combination of racial oppression and economic class profoundly influence the context of drug initiation, drug use patterns, and the consequence of drug misuse and addiction. So, to reduce the socioeconomic disparities, the government has worked on racial ethnic differences that include unemployment and homelessness, family income and insurance status for adolescents, Medicaid funding, addiction treatments, homeless and mental health status. And this is all to improve socioeconomic disparities in health care and addiction resources is the necessity of, to build a healthy community. So there has been 10 components of recovery that was developed by the APA. One is self-direction. Two, individualized and person-centered. Empowerment, holistic, non-linear, strengths-based, peer support, respect, responsibility, hope. These are all 10 components of recovery that can help individuals. Another point that they talked was about the different groups. And I want to talk to you first about the Asian American and Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. The majority refer to themselves by their country of origin. So Asian Americans are the highest income, best educated, and recently passed Hispanic as the fastest growing. Together, the Asian American or Pacific Islanders group is about 5% of the population between 2000 and 2010. This population grew by over 43%. So Asian Americans remain at least at risk group for use and abuse of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. The prevalence rates of current alcohol use were lowest among Asians adolescents and 8% compared to the highest rates of 12.9% of white adolescents. And although there is a great variation because of economic class, education and level of acculturation is it's a traditional value are actualized in individual people. So several authors have pointed out that consistent traditional cultural themes that may pose barriers to getting help through mainstream treatment programs and may even contribute to cultural clash, stress that contribute to a person's own drug use. Now let's talk about American Indians and Alaska Natives. Historically, this group has been stereotyped for drunkenness and powerless. Today, they can and do love anywhere on a social spectrum that might run from traditional to acculturated and everything in between. Individuals that among persons age 12 or older, the rate of substance dependence or abuse was highest among American Indians or Alaskan Natives. The rate of binge drinking for the adult was 23.5 compared to a low of 12.4 for Asian and high for 12.7 for Native Hawaiians. In terms of treatment, 17% of American Indians and Alaska Natives adults were in need of alcohol or illicit drug treatment in the combined 2003 through 2011 data. Let's talk a little bit about Hispanics and African Americans. First, Hispanics totaled 17% of the U.S. population in 2013, which is like 54 million people, mostly living in the west of South, primarily Texas, California, and Florida. The rate of substance dependence or abuse for persons reporting themselves as Hispanic was 8.6, slightly higher than the national average of 8.2. And Hispanics who need substance use treatments were less likely than non-Hispanics to have received treatment a specialty facility in the past year. So Hispanics youth also have lower rates of current alcohol use, which is also cigarette use, marijuana use, and the non-medical use of prescription type drugs. The effect of acculturation on Latina women is more evident than among men regarding drinking patterns. Now, African Americans were lower in the rate of substance dependence or abuse, 7.4 compared to the rate of 8.2 for the general population. About 55% of Black admissions has a problem with cocaine in 2000, but only 40% had a problem in 2010. So that's good that it was reduced. African Americans are more likely to die of a homicide than any other racial ethnic group. And African Americans are nearly 3 times as likely as white to live in poverty. Fortunately, poverty rate of 27.2% is the second highest of all the groups. So that was part of the reading that we read from the book Addiction Treatment, A Strengths Perspective. Also reading from the Narcotic Anonymous, the 12 Traditions of NA. Personal recovery depends on NA unity, and that unity depends on how well they follow their traditions. The 12 traditions of NA are not negotiable. They are the guidelines that keep their fellowship alive and free. Their traditions protect them from the internal and external forces that can destroy them. They are the ties that bind them together. That is part of the Narcotic Anonymous. But the AA, they have very similar ideals. In the meetings, they have made choices to speak up. They would bring thoughts of thankfulness for being sober or clean. The principle of AA is to understand that gratitude is an action. Don't tell me, but show me, says Father Martin in one of his videos. 12 steps is walking the walk. So sobriety was hard for some, but the principles of trusting God has helped many. So this is part of the video that I watched from Father Martin in the 12 steps. And I personally, can confirm this through the testimonies given in the AA and NA meetings that I have visited. They all shared same ideas and principles. The 12 steps have been summarized as follow. Steps 1, 2, and 3, trust God. Steps 4 through 11, clean house. And step 12, help others. So that's what I've learned this week about Narcotic Anonymous and Alcoholic Anonymous. From the book Recovery Rising, William White. He describes how most of his time he conducts treatment follow-up studies to scientifically evaluate the effectiveness of addiction treatment. But he didn't know much about long-term recovery. So he expressed that as a field, we could fill whole libraries with what we know about psychoactive drugs and the process and consequences of addiction. But what about the solutions? So he was questioned by someone, and he himself started asking himself too, yeah, what about the solutions? He felt that it was time to shift his focus of attention to the prevalence, pathways, stages, and styles of long-term addiction recovery. Through this behavioral health recovery management project, it finally emerged. And White's vision of recovery management was that the person doing the managing was not the professional, but individuals and families seeking and in recovery. So one of the challenges of long-term follow-up studies of people leaving addiction treatment is achieving a high enough follow-up rate to ensure that scientific integrity of the study findings. So Dr. Scott created numerous innovations to consistently achieve 94 to 95% follow-up rates in the studies she directed. And White went and asked her, well, how did you do it? And all you had to do for great results was to create space in their lives over an extended period of time, have relationship building, respect and positive regard, a highly systemized effort to remain in contact via ongoing phone contacts or personalized care, sending a card on holidays and birthdays. So that was part of the reading for Recovery Rising. Now, I want to talk to you about faith and personal perspective view. Relying on the Bible and understanding how Jesus approached many situations can give guidance on spirituality. People struggling with addictions have suffered consequences, and we are like a bridge over troubled waters, like the angel who troubled the waters in Bethesda. And I got this from the video we watched, how he's telling the story of Bethesda and in the waters and people going in and getting healed, when the angel would come by and trouble the waters. And he kept on going on telling this story. When those addicted individuals go through troubles and trials, God in the power of the Holy Spirit gives us the opportunity to seek more. Addicts need to develop character like the 6 and 7 steps and Anonymous, Alcoholic Anonymous. Those steps, they teach you to make inventory of our morals. So basically, it helps us perfect our characters. But when addicts make excuses because things are in the way, addicts will start talking about temptation. And Jesus, when he went and tried to heal this person where he was in Bethesda, Jesus didn't have much of a conversation with the guy requesting to be healed. He just told him, you want to be healed? Okay, you're healed. And he said no more. So it's important to ask, how important is it for that person to recover and not go back? Do you in fact want to get well? It's important to ask those questions to those addicts when they want to recover. And unfortunately, some are ambivalent because they are double-minded. A part of them wants to get well and the other part doesn't. And they want to go to do, they just want God to do the work for him or the therapist. And unfortunately, a lot of times they don't want to do much. But according to this video that I was watching, In a motivational interviewing, counselors can be directive. And it's okay to be a spiritual director. Challenge the client to take it seriously and help them understand their own ambivalence. So yeah, ask them, do you want to get well? Are you ready to change? Are you ready to stop? Talk to the client. Tell them Jesus is in the room. He's listening. Today, you want to be free? Okay. Today is the day that you can be free of addiction. And Christ will heal you. And that is something that spiritually we can help the client with. We are assessing and encouraging for readiness to change and have a personal interaction with the clients. That's very important. Because overall, we're there as counselors to help. And also to let them see that God may be trying to teach them something to help them develop their new character and growth. Step 12 describes that there is a spiritual awakening of the soul, a result of these steps. So this is what I learned this week. This is the different things I learned. This is Kenny Perez, and thank you.